So glad you're with us for the Monday edition of the Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity is not here today. He's probably basking in the second win of the season for his beloved New York Jets, wherever he is today. I can promise you he's not in a war zone, but here in his place today is Rob Long, who has subbed for Jim on numerous occasions. Rob is a co-founder of Ricochet. He's co-host of the Glop podcast. He's host of the Martini Shot. So many accomplishments. Hollywood screenwriter, so many things. Rob, good to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here.
We got so much to talk about. We got a theme today, kind of bad decisions. So we're going to be talking about the Democrats' decision to shut down the government for, almost a month and a half. And then after, doing really well in the elections, then they decide to pack it in and go for the clean resolution in the Senate. So their caucus is having a lot of fun today, dealing with all that. And then there's also President Trump wanting to cut $2,000 checks to low and middle income Americans based on revenues from the tariffs. We'll be digging into that. And we'll be taking a look at the price tag. Now that he's been elected, we can actually look at the price tag because we didn't want to do that first for Zohran Mamdani's agenda in New York City, free childcare, free buses, all that kind of stuff. So, Rob, I know you don't live in New York City anymore. I bet you're pretty glad of that right now, but we got a lot to dig into today.
Yeah, I don't live there anymore. I'm happy to not live there anymore. It allows me to sort of like laugh and smirk and be completely free of any kind of impending doom. But everybody I know who is still living there is now just terrified and doesn't know what to do.
Okay.
Let it unfold is what I say.
I guess so. This is how we learn, as they say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk about all of that in a moment, starting with the shutdown. But first, today's episode is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. And we just had our daylight savings time shift in most of the country. A couple states are on standard time all year round. But that means longer darkness during the day. It means less light. And for some people, that's a good thing. Other people definitely struggle with that. But whether it's, the shorter daylight hours or whether it's just kind of a difficult time in your life, maybe it's time to talk to someone even beyond those friends who mean well, but just can't necessarily give you the insights that maybe you need because they've walked other people through this many, many other times before. And that's where BetterHelp really can make a difference. BetterHelp matches you with a therapist based on a short questionnaire using more than 12 years of experience to get it right on the first connection. And you can switch therapists at any time if needed. And with more than 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, having served more than 5 million people globally. So this month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it easier to take that first step. Our listeners at 3 Martini Lunch get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/3ML. That's better, HELP.com/3ML. All right, Rob. Well, last night, the United States Senate finally got to the 60-vote mark to cut off debate
Right.
and move to a final vote on reopening the government at existing funding levels, which is actually Biden-era levels. And the Democrats didn't want to do what's known as the clean CR. They wanted to attach, of course, renewed funding for Obamacare subsidies and some other things. But ultimately, they decided, or at least 8 of them did, that wasn't the smart way forward anymore. A couple different ways of looking at this on the Democratic side. First of all, you've got Angus King, who was one of those 3 Democrats or people who caucus with the Democrats. He's technically an independent, basically saying the Democratic strategy was pretty lousy from the get-go.
You have to go back to what the strategy was at the beginning of the shutdown. There were 2 goals, both of which I support. One was standing up to Donald Trump. The other was getting some resolution on the ACA premium tax credit issue. The problem was the shutdown wasn't accomplishing either goals, and there was there was zero likelihood that it was going to.
Isn't it weird that one of the tactics and the reasons for shutting down the government was simply to oppose Donald Trump? Oh, and we also wanted to fill in the ACA subsidy. So we'll get to Senator Chris Murphy in a second. But what do you make of the Democrats finding 8 votes to get to 60?
Well, they're acting like they're surprised by this outcome. Yeah. I mean, look, you could go if you just drop yourself into any town in America. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I don't mean normal America. Anybody, and you ask them to explain what that shutdown was and what it was about and what a continuing resolution is and what a filibuster. American people are baffled by this. All they know is that this happens all the time. It happens all the time. I mean, this is not what is it, the 19,000th shutdown in my adult lifetime. And at no point, never, at zero times, has it ever benefited the party that controls Congress. It has never. They have always suffered. Ask Newt Gingrich. It never does. And the idea that this time it's different, is just it's just amazing. It's amazing adult people still say that to themselves and believe it. At no point was this ever not going to hurt the party. In fact, the party, not power, the party, the opposition party, the party not in the White House, I should say. And it's baffling to me that everyone who's paid attention to the world knows this, except the people who are compelled to do it over and over again. And whether they were the Democrats this time, the Republicans have done it too. If you're not the president and you're shutting down the government, you're going to lose.
No, that happens every time.
Every time.
Nobody wanted, at least on the right, wanted Obamacare to take effect. Ted Cruz tried to lead a filibuster to defund it when Obama was in the White House and Democrats controlled the Senate. Republicans, I think, had the House. But, that ended up not working out very well. And there's been other times as well. And so it's also, I think, the party with the cleaner explanation. And when it's just, hey, we just want to keep funding things the way they are versus, yeah, we got to fund it, but we also want to do this, this, and this. I don't think that works out very well as well. I think if the Democrats had gone with the clean CR and then on October 1st said, hey, let's just beat the drum on this other issue, I think they might have had a little more momentum. Now, should COVID era Obamacare subsidies continue in perpetuity is another question for another day. I don't think
it's a question for later today, that's for sure.
Yeah, no question about it. And so, but Chris Murphy is a Democratic senator from Connecticut. He's less rational than Angus King. If you pay attention to Chris Murphy, you know that. Here's him talking about why he couldn't possibly have gone along with this vote last night. He's got the 5 o'clock shadow going. Robbie's been working around the clock, trying to resist with a clenched fist, but it's apparently this fight over money is really about saving democracy.
I didn't want this shutdown. I want it to end, but not at any cost. And of course, I wish that there was a path to saving this democracy and saving people's health care that didn't involve pain. This shutdown hurt. It did. But unfortunately, I don't think there is a way to save this country, to save our democracy, without there being some difficult, hard moments along the way.
Once again, saving our democracy for Democrats seems to mean we didn't get our way, so democracy
on
is
a budget resolution.
Yes. So, what do you make of that one?
They're always, these people are staggeringly dense on either side, but on this side, in American politics. Since the beginning of America, since the Constitution was written, it's in the DNA of our nation that you don't get what you want. You get the C+ version of what you want, the B- version of what you want. You never get what you want because there's just too many moving parts and the country's just too fractious, and that's the way it's designed. So if you go into Congress or into the Senate thinking you're going to get what you want and you're not going to have to eat that specific kind of cookie, which we're not going to talk about, but it's basically what American politics is, right? And you think that's going to be that's a reflection of democracy and the strength of democracy. The fact that the Democratic senators caved, the fact that this fell apart, means that democracy, as constituted by the founders, is working great. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to be sad and humiliated and depressed over a budget resolution. They're supposed to be incredibly furious and ashamed they didn't get what they wanted. James Madison is looking down from his throne on high, and he's laughing and saying, "Yeah, you guys, when are you going to get this? Yeah, it's fine. It's like it's the opposite of a last-ditch effort to save democracy. This is democracy in action."
Yeah, I would love to see regular order at some point. Allegedly, the House passed their 11 or 12, 13 spending bills. The Senate always slower, and then they never like what the House did, and so it would be great because that makes people a little bit more frugal, a little bit more responsible instead of just doing the omnibus bill or the CR. And Rob, we get to do this all again, assuming this passes the Senate today and the House later in the week. We get to do this all again in 2 months. So I'm sure you're excited about that.
Yeah. One thing we know for a fact is that we'll never be on 3 Martini Lunch talking about a government shutdown ever again, because these people have learned their lesson. and they will never repeat their idiotic mistakes of the past. Thank God. This is over and done with forever now.
That's right. Oh, man. So we should, yeah. And all the right people are really angry. Bernie's upset.
Right.
The Lincoln Project's upset. You know, it's just fabulous. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about our next great sponsor. That is OneSkin. Mrs. Columbus has said, as I've mentioned before, that she likes OneSkin because it goes in nice and light. It's not oily or greasy. It absorbs into the skin really well. I like the sunscreen. Also, not too greasy, but also just really does a great job. And it's good for your skin in general. And then when it comes to OneSkin, what you need to know is that at the core is their patented OS1 peptide, which is the first ingredient proven to target senescent cells, Rob. Senescent cells, the root cause of wrinkles, crepiness, and loss of elasticity, all key signs of skin aging. And these results have now been validated in 5 different clinical studies. It's also worth pointing out that all of OneSkin's products are designed to layer seamlessly and replace multiple steps in your routine, making skin health easier and smarter at every age. So for a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using the code 3ML at oneskin.co/3ML. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support the 3 Martini Lunch and tell them that we sent you. That's code 3ML at oneskin.co/3ML for 15% off. Well, unfortunately, the Democrats aren't the only ones making questionable fiscal decisions or proposals these days, Rob. Let's move over to the President of the United States. The White House Post from this morning, quoting the president, all money left over from the $2,000 payments made to low and middle income USA citizens from the massive tariff income pouring into our country from foreign countries will be substantial and be used to substantially pay down the national debt, unquote. Now, on Friday, Jim pointed out that it took a whopping 71 days to go from a national debt of $37 to $38 trillion. A little over 2 months to rack up $1 trillion in deficits and ultimately debt. And so the other thing, of course, here is that we're kind of on the bubble, Rob, of trying to keep inflation tamed. It's right around 3%. It's higher than we want it to be. It's not the worst we've ever seen it, but it's not great. And cutting checks to people, as we learned during COVID, is a great way to keep inflation down.
It's Monday morning, so my advice to all the Trump supporters is, don't come out in favor of this just yet and talk about how it's very different from what Biden did, and these are not stimulus checks, and we're not sending free money to people. Hold your fire, because he might change his mind on Wednesday, in which case you'll look very foolish, because then you'll have to go back and tweet, "Oh no, wait, you didn't let me finish," as all these Trump supporters have to do when he says something crazy. Giving free money to people is inflationary. It's inflationary whether Mickey Mouse does it, or Joe Biden does it, or Donald Trump does it, or Richard Nixon did it. That's a bad idea. It's also weird because I was actually doing some math. It's hard. Look, they say, I don't know, the tariffs have been what, $200 billion, they say, although the audited number is something close to 75 billion, right? But there's like 38 million Americans who are poverty plus 25%. So those are poor Americans, and there's probably another, I don't know how many more that earn around $40,000. So I think the math, if you're really generous with everybody, kind of works out. It might actually be, if you send all those people checks for $2,000, you end up with zero from your tariff fund. So in a way, it's like I kind of get the distribution of the boon here. The problem is that you're not going to make that much money on tariffs, that the economy is going to shrink because tariffs do that. Because, of course, the economic forces that mean that inflation increases when you send people free money, those same Milton Friedman was right about that, and he was also right about tariffs. So you're going to have a shrinking economy, and you're not going to have inflation. Trump is managing to recreate everything terrible about the Biden economy. And the irony is, of course, that his supporters are going to cheer him for it. Giving people checks is a mistake. It is bananas to me that a Republican president, or at least an erstwhile Republican president, is suggesting that. It is bananas to me that there will be an amen chorus among certain Republicans about how this is a great idea. This, this to me is a sign that, I mean, look, if I had any AI capabilities at all, I would create an AI Milton Friedman, and I would have him available. He'd be the new Grok. Just ask him these questions and see what his answer is. And his answer would be, don't do it. Don't do this. But his answer would probably be, don't impose the tariffs either. And then on a political level, the problem with this is that it's panic. This is not – he can't even claim it's part of a worldwide pandemic and economic shutdown. This is just panic because he's seeing that his policies are not doing what he wants them to do. And so like every panicked politician, it's like, well, what free crap can I give you now so that you'll forget that your the economy is in your life demonstrably worse. That's a bad sign. It's a bad sign in politics.
Yeah, I happened to be at the Lions Commanders game yesterday where Trump was swearing in the new members of the armed forces. There was a strong reaction when he came on the Jumbotron, and even if you give all those people $2,000 checks, if they qualify, I don't know if they qualify, I'm guessing their vote's not going to change much. They'll take the check, but they're probably not going to.
Look, I mean, if you can wake him up from his nap, ask Joe Biden how people ultimately react when you send them free money. They kick you out of office.
Yeah. Well, when the price of everything else goes up, the check doesn't end up covering very much. Yeah. So that's a problem too. The other thing that's being kicked around the last couple of days here, Rob, is possibly going to a 50-year mortgage, which seems incredibly counterproductive. But one of the reasons it's being kicked around is because a lot of young people can't afford homes these days, though, and that's one of the reasons why there's so much economic frustration is people feel stuck. I'm not an economist. You're not an economist. But how do we get out of this?
For sure. Well, I love the idea. People can't afford homes right now, so let's make sure they can't afford them for 20 more years.
Right.
Look, it's every borrower's dream, really, when they get right down to it, to die owing a lot of money that cannot be recouped. Right? That is kind of what you want, right? I want the money now, and you can come and knock on my closed casket for the payment, and you're not going to get it, right? That's everybody. That's what credit cards are. Credit cards spend, and you die, and they can't get you. The problem with real estate and real estate prices, to me, and I'm not an economist, is that there is too much intervention in the borrowing and paying for it. And there are too many costs associated with it. If you look at any closing of any real estate deal, there's these pages and pages and pages of fees, and like, oh, the license to this guy, and then this person's fee, and that person's fee, and all that's buried in this 30-year mortgage. So like maybe your monthly payment goes up $5, $10. You don't even notice it. It's like when you buy a car, like they throw it all in there so that you don't even notice it. Adding another 20 years of that is not going to lower the price of any house. The houses are going to prices are going to increase to include and bake in that cake. And by the way, every single escrow company, every single fee receiving participant in that transaction, and I bought a house in California. If you buy a house in California, it's like you basically are writing a giant, like it's a huge thing. It's like the epic of it's like a giant saga, like one of those Scandinavian sagas goes on for 1,000 pages. It's enormous. And all those people get a fee, and that fee goes up every year because you don't notice it. And whenever you don't notice a cost, guess what? It goes up. It goes up. So housing prices will rise to accommodate that 50-year mortgage probably in a year. And if you don't believe me, I'm not an economist. You're not an economist. If you don't even believe economists, you just look and see what happened in Japan. They did this in Japan, and this precise thing happened. It's a series of stupid ideas coming from people who either should know better or are just spinning in panic at an economy that isn't working.
Yeah, they do know better, but they're not willing to say so. And it's fascinating. I mean, the whole point, generally speaking, is to kind of have your mortgage done by the time you hit retirement, or maybe just a little bit after that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be paying your mortgage at 85 or 90 or whenever these 50-year mortgages would kick in for some of these young people. So I understand the effort to try and help, but I don't think that's helping.
But when you create an economy based on, or at least a financial instrument economy based on refinancing, recombining, and then collateralizing debt, nobody signs a 50-year mortgage thinking that they're going to pay it off. Nobody signs a 30-year mortgage thinking they're going to pay it off.
Yeah.
They think, okay, if I keep this house, I will refi, but I'll also I plan to have 5 or 6 houses in my life. The way I'm going to have 5 or 6 jobs in my life, whereas our parents and grandparents thought, no, I got to have 1 job and 1 house. The solution isn't to make it easier and more fee-based and somehow more murky and less transparent. The solution is to become more market-oriented, which is something that rather than giving everybody $2,000, maybe we should do that. Give everybody a free webinar for personal and home finance.
See, we just created a whole new career here for Rob. He's going to create an AI Milton Friedman and then charge people a bundle to learn the principles of capitalism, but he's going to set them free, and he's going to make a mint off of it. So well done, Rob. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, well, speaking of understanding where we are today in our economy, let's talk about Oracle, because in business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick 2 of those. So what if you could have all 3 at the same time? And that's exactly what Cohere and Thomson Reuters and Specialized Bikes have done since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. How is it cheaper? It costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, 80% less for networking. How is it better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. So right now, with 0 commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini to try OCI for free. Oracle.com/martini. All right, Rob, on to our final martini, Crazy Martini. And as we mentioned at the top, you are a former resident of New York City, so you've certainly dealt with your share of terrible New York City mayors over the years.
Yeah.
But perhaps not one as crazy as Zohran Mamdani, who will take over at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Day. And he's promised a lot of stuff. And the New York Times has actually started digging into how much this free, quote-unquote, stuff is going to cost.
Now?
Yes. Of course, only after the fact. He's the darling of the race. He's this new, fresh face. Got to stop Cuomo. I mean, we'll worry about the details later if you're the mainstream media. Okay, but the biggest plan, the Times says, by far, is free universal child care. The city already offers free preschool for all 4-year-olds and many 3-year-olds. Expanding child care to infants and to toddlers under 3 would be a major challenge. Mr. Mamdani's administration would have to create new daycare facilities and hire scores of child care workers. Mr. Mamdani's own campaign estimated that this could cost $6 billion annually. The Times goes on to say it really could be anywhere between $2.5 billion and maybe even north of $12 billion, especially if it gets expanded to the entire state. Then there's, of course, buses. And that could be just a paltry $800 million annually. Looks pretty cheap compared to the universal child care thing. But if you go back to 2019 level ridership in New York City, it would be more like $900 million in bus fares. And of course, he wants to tax the rich to do that. $9 billion. He wants a new revenue by increasing income taxes for wealthy residents and corporate taxes on businesses. As usual, they don't get super specific on what rich means. So, Rob, Kathy Hochul has more influence over this than a lot of people realize as governor of New York. Yeah. She can put the kibosh to a lot of this stuff, and right now she seems to be leaning in that direction. But what do you make of you get this political phenomenon, and it's only after the fact where the hangover's worn off, where you're like, oh, yeah, this doesn't look like a very good idea.
Yeah, no, none of that looks like a good idea. I mean, all of it comes to the head of your free stuff, which I'm against because I'm I'm an old man. Against I want you off my lawn. I don't want to give you any free stuff. But it's also kind of a strange way to look at what the problems with the city are. And the problems with the city are really this kind of weird imbalance in housing, which I think is fair to say. This sort of the enormous amount of like regulation to keep people from building new housing, and then a regulated housing market, and then a kind of a squeeze in Midtown and sort of business sections where some of those businesses are leaving, and then a kind of a perceived crime problem. Those are the problems that actually hurt people. People have been raising kids in New York City since New York City. They've been raising kids in New York City when it was a lot nastier than it is now. They've been raising kids in New York City when there was a lot more poverty and a lot more lawlessness. So it isn't like that's a problem. It is a problem. It isn't like that is an unsolvable problem or an emergency. The emergency is making the city livable and making the city a place where new people come and new people start businesses and new people feel that they can. That is the solution, right? Or that is the area where solutions will be found. The idea of creating a whole new set of citywide entitlement benefits in a city that has so many of them, and they overlap, and they compete, and they're redundant, and they're incredibly expensive, and they're all unionized, is simply not a solution. I mean, it isn't even close to a solution. If you look at what people, Reagan used to say something. I thought he said everything I thought was brilliant, but he said something. He said there is not one problem that we face today as a nation that somebody isn't solving somewhere right now, and the struggle is to find out where they're solving that. And they are solving a lot of childcare problems, childcare issues for the variety and diversity of parents in New York City. And they're solving them in places that are in the community based, usually in churches and places like that. And a solution is going to come from there. It's not going to come from City Hall. It's bizarre that we have to say this after, I don't know, at least 100 years of city, not quite 100 years, but at least 80 years of city intervention in these things. But we have to say it over and over again, that there is no solution in City Hall.
Yeah, people look to government way too often, especially in the deep blue areas. But Mamdani has a backup plan, Rob, in case Kathy Hochul kind of slams the door on raising taxes on people. First of all, Mamdani and the city council, I think, do have the power to raise property taxes on people. But also, it says in the Times he wants to streamline city contracts. We'll see. Hire more auditors to enforce the tax code and collect more fines. So they're going to be nitpicking every little thing and raising the fines and the fees. So that's going to be real popular.
Yeah, but here's where my inner authoritarian comes out. As somebody who was driving into New York City on Saturday, and I got, for the first time in a long time, I got a traffic ticket. I took a left on 6th Avenue from 23rd Street, and you're not allowed to do that. And I did it because otherwise I was going to block the box. I didn't want to do that. And I said, explain this to the cop. I said, look, you know why I did this. I did this because I was blocking the thing, and I wasn't supposed to block the thing. That truck stopped in front of me, and it wasn't, and I didn't. I made a judgment call. And he goes, yeah, I know. Here's your ticket. So I got to pay. If Mamdani's police force gave a ticket to every stupid bike going down the wrong side, or driving through traffic, or every car stopped for any reason, it just stops. These cars in New York City just stop sometimes. They just, I'm going to stop right here in the middle of the road. If they gave fat tickets for that, I think they'd build him a statue. I think he'd probably raise some money, could pay for all of his crackpot. That's my offer to Mamdani. Crack down on that kind of thing. Big fat fines. As somebody who's paid one or is going to pay one, I can say with authority that they work. And then just watch it. They'll build a statue to you right in Madison Square. It'll be the Mamdani Square. They'll call it that, because that's the only way to raise the real money, and the only way to sort of to crack down on and get fines and raise fine revenue without driving everybody insane. And the other outcome would be an easier place to walk around and bike and drive, because people would be forced to obey the law.
That would make things easier, but I suspect he's more along the lines of, first of all, he'd probably fine you for whatever emissions your vehicle is spewing out.
Yeah.
But also, if your grass is a little too high, or these little kind of normally like HOA type things that are really nitpicky. That seems to be the way the left usually goes on these things. But if he actually does what you suggest he does, I think he would end up more popular. So
the problem with socialists is that they're liberals. If they weren't liberals, they'd be great, because I wouldn't mind. I would say $1,000 fee to ride a bicycle in New York City every month. Problem solved.
Yeah, the ones that flagrantly flout the traffic laws and make everybody's lives more dangerous are definitely frustrating. Got a lot of those in DC too. But anyway, Rob, always great to have you with us. I don't know how many people are going to listen to us, but they definitely should. And good luck with your AI Milton Friedman project. I think that's a real winner.
Yeah, thank you. We'll send $2,000 to everybody who listens to this.
There is some fine print on that. But Rob Long is the co-founder of Ricochet. He's also the co-host of the Glob podcast, host of the Martini Shot, in for Jim Garrity. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow all of us on X. Rob is at RCBL. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. And coming soon, Facebook and Instagram. So be ready for that. And join us again Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.